Why is evolution so ridiculous for people who don't know much about creationism? Why is evolution so ridiculous? Why is Charles Darwin wrong when, everyone tries to say that he's the standard that we should live by for science?
Well, yeah. Well, number one, Charles Darwin, like I said earlier, he was afraid that he was living in a fantasy. So I always tell people, do you really want to trust somebody who was scared they were living in a fantasy? I mean, how ridiculous is that? And he's the one who founded evolution theory. So he's their main man. He's the man that is looked to as the founder. I believe evolution's been around for much longer, but Darwin was the one who everybody refers to as being the founder, typically. So an easy way to show that evolution is just ridiculous is just based, you can look at the laws of thermodynamics. The first law of thermodynamics states that matter cannot be created or destroyed. And if at one time there was no matter, matter cannot be created or destroyed. It can't create itself. So by default, something outside of matter would have had to create matter. It's just basic scientific law. Evolution teaches that out of nothing, an explosion occurred. And out of this chaotic explosion, order was produced. Well, we've never observed that. So can we call it science? The first part of the scientific method is to make an observation. I've never observed an explosion out of chaos producing order, let alone living organisms. So everything with evolution is completely backwards to what we see around us in the actual world. They teach that this explosion out of chaos produced order and planets in a perfect orbit. Well, the ridiculous part of that is the second law of thermodynamics states that everything in order tends towards chaos. And even if there was a single-celled organism at the beginning, that single-celled organism would have just died off. I mean, it would have reproduced a few worse versions of itself and it would have died off because entropy would occur. In other words, the organism would get worse over time, not better. Evolution teaches that things get better over time. The second law of thermodynamics teaches that things get worse over time. So every single scientific claim from the evolutionists, not just one or two, but every single one of them, if they know what they're talking about, is done in dishonesty. It's not science. It's part of their religion of atheism. And they literally teach that monkeys surfed from Africa to South America 34 million years ago on rafts. That's the only way that monkeys could have gotten to the United States. And supposedly those monkeys were the monkeys that we evolved from. That is bizarre. They also teach that squids and octopuses came from outer space because they couldn't have evolved from any other sea creature. That is weird. I mean, let's pretend that they came from outer space and hitched a ride on comets like the articles state. If that's true, they would have just roasted from the atmosphere coming in. So every single claim that they've made is completely unscientific. They teach that the reason that men, and I just found this out today doing some research, that men, the reason that we have hair on our face is because we were actually punched to a point where we needed a cushion, where natural selection actually created a cushion in our face. I mean, this is the most wild stuff you could think of, but people actually believe this. This is what evolution teaches. It is weird. It's not just unscientific, it's weird. It's wicked too, because it's rejecting the facts, it's rejecting the scientific method, it's rejecting the laws of thermodynamics. Any single person who studies this stuff long enough will see that evolution is impossible to defend honestly. It's impossible.